Elon Musk becomes the largest shareholder in Twitter after buying 9.2% of the stock. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. Sacramento experiences a mass shooting out in the middle of the streets. Well, that's weird. It's an election year. But we'll talk just a bit about what's going on that and the strategy that happens with that. An official review of the Trump phone logs from January 6th finds that the 7 hours, so-called, of missing phone calls is perfectly normal. And that's not even coming from, like, the Washington Examiner or something like that. That's coming from fucking CNN. So we'll go over just a bit about what's going on with that. And the U.S. State Department is set to issue gender-neutral X passports. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. So I saw this just as I was getting started because I wanted to see what the 9.2% of Twitter was. I thought maybe it was just a poll or something, and realized that no, that's right. It's the top story of what we're going to be talking about here. But an activist group in Janesville decided to get in on this, and I had to strike back at them just because they think that's a little bit of election finance reform, I should say, in their city hall's election system is going to fix all of their heroin problems that they have going on throughout that city. Pretty sure the lack of industry and the industry that they chased out of Janesville is going to... It's causing more detriment to the city than who is sitting in the city at this point. Although, if you get one of these corrupt officials out, maybe you could convince Ford or somebody to go in down there and restart and rebuild the economy of that city. But I'm not here to speculate about local politics. I could do that if you guys want me to, but most of you guys don't live around the city of Janesville in one of the suburbs that is not as ravaged as the city is. Most of you live all across the country, so we got to do some national news and possibly some international news as well. So let's get right into it. And as for Mondays go, I mean, we don't have a bad schedule here. I don't think we're going to be done at 9, but, you know, 9, we're not going to be busting in on the daily ignoramus at the very end either. I don't think. 40 tabs up here. That includes all of the finance and all of the get started here. So I'd say let's get into it and let's get started, shall we? But before we do, head on over and check out the start page for returnsofpagesproductions.com. I know I've been teasing you for a long time about the start page with the GoFundMe and the fact that we started this right towards the end of the year as we were getting into Thanksgiving season. We didn't have a lot of donations. We do have a good chunk of what we need to go get started off of this. So definitely something that's worth looking into. It's something that people believe in. But, with the GoFundMe that was starting to be really, really cucked, we laid off of it for a little bit here. But, once I get the name out there, we're going to start going hard into this. But do not let that stop you from going and checking out the creators who are slated to be on here at the start. And I, of course, am talking about the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, the Porch Boys, whichever project that Britt winds up coming up and doing herself, and a new surprise creator who is going to be added to the lineup as we get started. So definitely go and check that out, turnsofpagesproductions.com. And if you do want to help out, before we get in, and I sent a message over to Brian to see if we can figure out when this is going to happen, but if you do want to go check that out, give sendgo.com/turnsofpages101 with my real government name sitting out here on front. So that's the reason we haven't been distributing it too hard yet. But once we get in there and once we get started, we will be going hard on getting this campaign out there to the world, because my dream is to bring you guys news from the common man for the common man, because why do we have to get our news from people who wear a suit that costs more than our houses? So go and check that out. Those of you who are in the know get to see the Give, Send, Go before everybody else does, but as for the rest of us, do prepared. And please, once we get started, once I do get this launched, get that out there, give a tweet, give a Facebook post, email your friends, tell everybody this is what we want to do. We want to have news that are news and culture, I was going to say, because Daily Ignoramus, Porch Boys, and the new upcoming show that we have coming, none of those are news shows. That is all culture. But definitely go and check that out. turnsofpages.com, turnsofpageproductions.com, givesendgo.com/turnsofpages101. Let's get started. Let's start by looking in at the finance for the morning here. Looking in, one of the first things that we see coming back up off of this is the Dow, which spent a whipsaw day up on Friday. It came up at the beginning of the day, but it dropped back below the previous close, clawed its way back up and dropped again, clawed its way back up and dropped again almost to the previous close, and then managed to pull back another 0.4% throughout the rest of the day, and that is within the last 20 minutes of trading here, which tells me there might have been a little bit of honking at the end, but it is what it is. It ended the day up 139.92 to 34,818.27 points. On the industrial average, looking in at the Bitcoin, is at $46,230 and 20 US cents per coin. That is across the 24 hours down 192.60. But if we look at the 5-day and look at where we were on the first, that is a fairly significant claw back from the last time we looked back at this as well. So those of you who are on Bitcoin, congratulations. You have pulled back a little bit off of what you lost coming back from March 29th, or March 30th rather. But yes, now we're sitting here, $46,230 and 20 US cents per coin. And that's where your Bitcoin is. Looking at your scrap metal, a little bit of a mix-up in the markets coming here. Copper on the average is up, steel is up, and aluminum is down on the major averages. Looking in at your individual plays, bare bright copper wire, number 1 tubing, number 1 flashing copper are all down. Number 2 tubing, insulated wire are both up. THHN is down, Romex is up, brass is up, brass shells are up, conduit steel is up. Let's see, light iron, number 1 steel, cast iron, rotors, complete car, and shreddable steel are all up, but stainless is back down. On aluminum siding is down, but aluminum copper pin, regular radiators, cans, sheet aluminum, rims are all up, electric motors are up, ballasts are up, lead is up, car and truck batteries are up, small foreign cats are up, large foreign cat, regular domestic, large GM and small GM catalytic converters are all down, compressors are up, alternators are up, carbide is up, hard drives are up, motherboards are up, power supplies, low-grade boards, and PC tower are all down. So check out what you have around. And I mean, this does give a good idea as where we are at industrially in this country and beyond as well. And possibly some good looking. I know with the gas prices the way they are, I know a lot of people would question why I would go with the steel prices, but this is a good benchmark of what it is that our manufacturers are going to be calling for, what they want to make more of, and how many more jobs are going to be coming up. Unfortunately, that also means what's happening abroad as well, because a lot of this stuff does get shipped out to manufacturers in Europe, Asia, specifically in China and around the world, but this is still going to be a call as to what products are going to be out there. So definitely go and check that out. That's what we're seeing coming back up off of this. Let's see what IBD has to say. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Futures, market rally steadies. Twitter surges on Elon Musk's stake. Tesla deliveries hit high from Ed Carson. Dow Futures rose slightly Monday morning, along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures. Twitter skyrocketed Monday after Tesla CEO Elon Musk disclosed a 9.2% stake in Twitter stock. Tesla reported record first quarter deliveries on Saturday with the EV giant near possible buy points. China EV giant BYD reported monthly sales above 100,000 for the first time. The stock market rally is in the midst of a modest pullback after a strong run from mid-March lows. The major indices still look healthy, but investors should be more cautious about the new buys in very short term and ready to exit positions. If they aren't working, growth and shipping stocks ran into trouble last week, such as Dutch Brothers and J.B. Hunt Transportation Services. Apple, Exxon, and SolarEdge Technologies are setting up near buy points. Well, I can't sit here and wonder why transportation stocks are having problems right now, because fuel is still in many parts of the country sitting at or just above $4 a gallon. And that's on the gas. Diesel's usually more expensive in most places. So all that is getting added to your fuel surcharge, and people are trying to find alternate ways to get their stuff from one place to the other, and trying to cut down on the number of trucks that are on the road right now, which means fewer trucks driving, fewer dollars per mile coming in, fewer dollars for the transportation companies. Apple, Exxon, and SolarEdge are setting up near buy points. Tesla is on the IBD leaderboard in the IBD 50. XOM is on the IBD Big Cap 20, which is full of energy and commodity names. The video, we're not watching the video. Elon Musk Twitter stake, we'll be talking about that in just a second. So let's move off of that. China's delisting threat. Beijing is signaling that it will back down versus the U.S. over accounting oversight, easing delisting fears. China's securities regulator said Saturday it would release revised regulations for Chinese companies listed overseas. Notably, this line will be removed from the rules. On-site inspections shall be conducted primarily by Chinese regulators or rely on the results of inspections by Chinese regulators. U.S.-listed Chinese stocks rallied Friday on a report that China was moving towards giving the U.S. auditing regulators access to those companies' books. But China's widening lockdowns and restrictions, including Shanghai's extended shutdown, could have a significant impact on production and demand hitting Chinese stocks. On your futures, Dow futures rose 0.1% versus fair value, S&P 500 futures climbed 0.2%, and NASDAQ futures rose 0.4%. The Hang Seng Index leapt 5.4% on Monday, with China internet and EV plays rallying on delisting optimism. The 10-year Treasury yield rose 2 basis points to 2.4%. The 2-year yield dipped 1 basis point to 2.42%, with the yield curve still inverted. Crude oil futures rose 1% to $100 a barrel. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So that is what we are seeing off of our domestic markets. Let's look a little bit at what happened. I always forget investing.com is, you're using an ad blocker. All right. Well, with that, let's get into the Twitter news of the day, shall we? So we are going to start with the Daily Wire. Breaking right now. Breaking. Elon Musk becomes Twitter's largest shareholder after shakeup tease, from Amanda Press to Giacomo. Tesla Twitter CEO. Well, he might be if he keeps going this direction. Tesla CEO Elon Musk has become left-wing social media platform Twitter's largest shareholder, taking 9.2% stake in Twitter Incorporated. Musk now has 4 times as many shares as Twitter founder Jack Dorsey, who owns 2.25%. Wow. Twitter shares surged about 26% in pre-market trading after the regulator filing released on Monday detailing Musk buying the holding. Bloomberg reported, and of course we all know Bloomberg as Ron Helton's favorite publication from his favorite politician. The stake is worth about $2.89 billion. Jeez. How much is Twitter valued at? that well, we could obviously do the math. 2.89 billion is only 9.2% of that. Jeez. Hold on. Let's get the calculator out. Let's see what we got here. So 2.8 or no, 2.89. 2,890,000,000 divided by 9.2 times 100 means that Twitter is valued total on all of its stock options at $31,413,043,478 US dollars and 26 US cents. And it's no wonder that they have an outsized role in what happens, especially in our political system. So that's what we see off of that. That's some big kind of money right now. And then, of course, the stock surged 26%, so it was less than that. The move comes after Musk teased a shakeup at Twitter or possible plans to build a new social media platform that promotes free speech. Last month, Musk asked his followers to vote in a poll about free speech and Twitter's adherence to it, emphasizing the consequences of this poll will be important. Well, realistically, in spite of the fact, and yes, I understand the fact where a lot of our content creators and many others will come back out and say that because Twitter hosts so many government services, they should be bound to the Constitution, they should be considered a government entity, but they are not. The government hasn't taken control over them. Yes, they have tax subsidies, but legally speaking, no, they are a private entity, and they don't have to adhere to the free speech idea. But I would like it very much if they did. I would like it very much if any social media company came out and did this and said, hey, you know what? Let's be a little bit more free speech. Let's be a little bit more Wild West. The government be damned. The move comes after Musk teased a shakeup at Twitter, possible plans to build a new social media platform that promotes free speech. Let's see. Free speech is essential to a functioning democracy. Do you believe Twitter rigorously adheres to this principle? The 50-year-old asked. The consequences of this poll will be important. Please vote carefully. When the poll came back to show that more than 70% of the 2 million plus who voted answered no, Musk teased creating a new platform of his own. Given that Twitter serves as the de facto public town square, failing to adhere to free speech principles fundamentally undermines democracy. What should be done, he asked, following up, saying, is a new platform needed? The next day, the entrepreneur said he was giving serious thought to building a new platform with an open source algorithm promoting free speech. Would you consider building a new social media platform? One Twitter user asked. One that would consist an open source algorithm, one where free speech and adhering to free speech is given top priority, one where propaganda is very minimal. I think that kind of platform is needed. I'm giving this serious thought to this, Musk responded. So, there's going to be some more coming out of this, and, you know, this is one where I didn't have a chance to even look into this last night because I found this at 7:10 this morning. So, some stuff to watch for, some stuff to see coming back up off of this, and, I mean, we'll see where this goes and what they do off of this, but I don't know if Musk is going to take this over, if he's going to take over the board of directors, change out the algorithms, if he's even got the possibility of doing that, because Dorsey couldn't do that anymore once he stepped away from the CEO's position off of it. But we'll see what happens. We'll see where it goes. And with that, we'll take this breaking news. We'll step off of that for a second, and we will look into what happened, because I know Highleaf wants me to talk about this, because I see it in the chat. Because I don't read the chat out loud on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, but I do see what you guys are saying. So yes, we do have to talk about this, starting today with the Associated Press. California mass shooting, 6 dead, 12 injured in Sacramento. From Adam Beam. 6 people were killed and 12 injured early Sunday in Sacramento when shots were fired into crowds as bars and nightclubs emptied for the night in the second mass shooting in 5 weeks in California's capital city. Interesting, we haven't heard of the first one. And 5 weeks ago, that would put us into February. At the very end of February, when the Ukrainian invasion was taking off. So the Biden admin, the Brandon admin, was hoping to get their political clout from that. Pay attention to the reason that I brought up the timeline for this, because that's going to be important. Police were searching for at least one suspect and had recovered at least one firearm. Investigators say they were reviewing video footage posted to social media that showed what appeared to be an altercation before the gunfire erupted. A video posted to Twitter showed people running through the streets amid the sounds of rapid gunfire in the city of about 525,000 located 75 miles from San Francisco. This morning, our city has a broken heart, Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg said. We don't know all the facts, but we know there were mass casualties in a very short amount of time. Officers were patrolling the area near the shooting site 2 blocks from the Capitol at about 2 a.m. when they heard gunfire and rushed to the scene. Police Chief Kathy Lester told reporters they found a large crowd gathered and 6 people dead in the street. 12 people, who police said were shot and wounded, were taken to a hospital or hospitals. The Sacramento Fire Department said 4 of the 7 people transported by its emergency workers were suffering from critical injuries. Authorities said some gunshot victims drove themselves to hospitals or were driven. Authorities recovered at least 1 firearm from the scene, a police statement said, and urged witnesses or anyone with recordings of the shooting to contact police. We're asking for the public's health and helping us to identify the suspects in this, Lester said. Asked if authorities were searching for 1 or more than 1 suspect, Lester told reporters that she didn't know. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they are searching for more than 1 suspect in something like this. Police announced in a statement that investigators were well aware of the video on social media that appears to show an altercation before the shooting, but did not yet know whether it was relevant to their investigation. Kelsey Sharpe was staying on the 4th floor of the Citizens Hotel when she said she heard gunshots and saw flashes in the dark. She walked to the window and saw a guy running and just shooting. Sharpe told the Associated Press in an interview. Her friend Madeline Woodard said that she saw the crowd in the street scatter amid the gunfire and a girl who appeared to have been shot in the arm. Laying on the ground, security guards from a nearby nightclub rushed to help the girl with what looked like napkins to try to stanch the bleeding. Pop duo Allie and AJ performed Saturday at Sacramento's Crest Theater, and their tour bus was caught in the gunfire, the musician said on Twitter. No one in their touring group was hurt, the tweet said. So, there are a lot of reasons. Now, once again, this is... There's a lot of stuff to unpack with this, and this is just off the first article. There are a couple other ones that we're going to go look at this, but first and foremost, this is Sacramento. So, this is suffering, number 1, from being in California. Being in an activist-controlled area, on top of everything, in an area that is rife with some of the strictest gun laws in the country. From the sounds of it, from the flashing, and I can't confirm this, I haven't seen any video of this so far. If anybody can find any video for this, link it up in the chat if you can. Or get it out to a moderator if you can, because then they can come back out and link it in the chat or link it in the DLive chat if we can see video of this. From the sounds of it, this looks like this is coming. This is a automatic gunfire, not semi-automatic gunfire, because it sounds to me, just from the way this is described, that they were doing a spray and pray into a crowd. And where in the U.S. can you, unless you have the major tax stab and everybody was watching you to begin with because you felt the need you had to have the automatic weapon, so the FBI's got to keep an eye on you. Where in the U.S. can you get an automatic weapon and hold on to an automatic weapon? In any situation other than this. So that's the first thing to look into when we look at this and see off of this. But that's the other side of this is the second mass casualty event in 5 weeks in Sacramento, which, by the way, is a capital city as well. Why am I not sure of that? I know that Sacramento is the capital of California. Why? Why am I unsure of that? Yes, it is Sacramento. But apparently it didn't used to be, according to the Google search off of that. Why was I unsure of that? I knew it was Sacramento. Anyway, yes, looking into this is a capital city as well, which means that there are a lot of activists, and there do tend to be a lot more left-wing policies than anything else. On top of everything else, even in Second Amendment friendly states, even in states where there's a huge gun culture, most of them have restrictions that you can't carry when you're going out to a bar or a nightclub, which meant that these are soft targets. And not over the fact that they don't want people to be safe in a bar or nightclub, it's over the fact of they don't want people to have their armaments on them. I mean, this kind of law goes all the way back to public gatherings in old Western times. You know, you come into a public gathering, you didn't usually have to do it in the saloon, obviously, but you go into a public gathering, the first thing that they have you do is check the iron. So things like this, even in the most Second Amendment friendly areas, are usually a soft target. You're going to go in there, you're going to start shooting, and you're not going to see a whole lot of resistance that comes back up out of it. But let's just talk about this for a second and the timing of this. And I mentioned some of this with the school shooting on Thursday as well, when we talked about it on Friday. We're coming to a point, and this is an election year, this is a midterm year, where you are going to start to see shootings like this get publicized. Now, there are shootings, and every town will be glad to come back out and tell you that there are shootings every single day in this country. Most of them do involve either gang violence, which I'm guessing that this is going to, I mean, especially if they find out this is gang violence, this is going to disappear from the news like that. But you'll either get gang violence or suicide gets counted as gun violence, if it's by gun, obviously. Or it's even considered gun violence if A, you shoot a shot off in a restricted area, up into the air, or manage to shoot yourself in the leg on an accidental discharge. All that's considered in gun violence statistics, to try to make the situation look more grim. But one of the things, given to be an election year, is you are going to start to see some of these get publicized. 5 weeks ago, there was allegedly, according to this article here, another mass shooting in the Sacramento area. But you didn't hear a word about that because 5 weeks ago would have put you into within 7 days of when the Ukraine was invaded by Russia. That was on February 24th. That was, for all intents and purposes, 5 weeks ago, 5.5 weeks ago. So I can't imagine why that wasn't out to the forefront, because that would have distracted from what the Biden admin was hoping and praying was going to help his cause. To help their election chances. To help make him a wartime president. And then come to find out that there is absolutely no appetite for this war in this country, no matter how bad we're propagandized to. So that is there, and we still have some other stuff to unpack with this as well, but we've got a couple articles to look on this. Of course, there's going to be calls for more gun control. But let's keep going. From KCRA3. Sacramento shooting. Police say 6 adults killed, 12 others downtown. Search for multiple shooters. So the Associated Press says that we don't know if there's one shooter or multiple shooters. KCRA says definitely multiple. From Daniel Macht, Lissay Matry, and Aaron Heft. Let's
we begin with breaking news.
Yeah, it's a 15-minute one. Let's read some of this. We'll actually look at some of the coverage too. Sacramento police believe multiple shooters were involved in a mass shooting early Sunday in downtown Sacramento that killed 6 adults and left 12 other people injured. Kathy Lester said Sunday afternoon that the shootings broke out after a large fight and killed 3 men and 3 women. Nearby buildings were hit by gunfire and a stolen handgun was recovered at the scene, Lester said. Gavin Newsom called the shooting yet another horrendous act of gun violence and said his admin was working with local and state law enforcement as we monitor the situation. What we do know at this point is that another mass casualty shooting has occurred, leaving families with lost loved ones, multiple individuals injured, and a community in grief, he said. The scourge of gun violence continues to be a crisis in our country, and we must resolve to bring an end to this carnage. Lester said that police were patrolling the area around 2 a.m. when they heard the gunfire. When they arrived at the scene, they found a large crowd gathered on the street. Officers began life-saving measures to multiple victims on the scene. Police said despite these efforts, 6 victims were pronounced deceased at the scene. Another 12 had varying degrees of injuries, police said in an update after earlier saying 10 people were hurt. As of Sunday evening, KCRA 3 has learned that 4 of those people have life-threatening injuries. So this casualty event might go up. 4 of the shooting victims were taken to UC Davis Medical Center and 1 to Sutter Hospital. KCRA 3 has confirmed. Authorities are asking for the public's help in identifying who is responsible. Beyond saying that a stolen gun was recovered and multiple shooters were involved, Lester did not give specifics on the types of guns used and the details about possible suspects. 40 evidence markers could be seen on the street on Sunday, and investigators seem to be focused on an area outside of the Sharpe fine jewelry store. At least 76 gunshots in 54 seconds. So again, we're talking multiple shooters or possibly automatic weapons. Let's see what this video looks like here.
Here on KCRA 3, we have a policy where we do not show you video that has not been verified and have permission to use the video. We have verified a video you're about to see was in fact taken last night, that it is of the mass shooting that happened last night. It is sent to us by 916 Times. It's a grassroots kind of news, local news in Sacramento area on social media. We do want to warn you, this is a very intense video. It starts with a fight. Again, we don't know if that was related to the shooting. And then people are just running for their lives, literally. It is tough to watch, so a warning for you, but here it is.
So, I'm going to walk back what I just said, because now that I actually had a chance to listen to this, hear one of the videos, it does not sound like this was automatic gunfire, because that would have been a lot faster, but there again, I can also say, because, I mean, there was a second in the midst of this as we were around the corner where you could hear that 2 guns were going off at the same time, at least. So, it was a minimum of 1 person with a gun in each hand. However, listening again, it does sound on the pitch like they were coming from a decent distance apart, like more than a 6-foot wingspan apart. Let's listen to just a little bit more of this. And yes, I apologize for the fear porn. I know MK Ultra just called me out off of this, but I wanted to just see if we can't identify how many armaments were being used and the approximate distance. I know it'll be difficult because people are running at the same time. That's one armament. That's a second one, because the first one possibly would have been out by that point. So, either the shooter is running down the crowd, or that is clearly a second gunman right there. But I want to say that would almost be a third, or the first one going back and running with the crowd, because first set of shots that we heard was approximately 15 to 20 feet away from where everything was happening. Second set sounded to be further away from that, and then the third set sounded to be closer to what was happening. So I'm going to say 3 at this point, because we have vicinity, further, and then closer in quick succession. And that's a different pitch and tenor. That sounds like a different ammo type. So I'm going to say 3. 3 shooters. Based on what I just got from that. A video posted on social media showed people running through the streets as the sound of rapid gunfire could be heard in the background. This is a very complex and complicated scene, Lester said. She issued a plea to the public, asking for witnesses or anyone with recordings of the incident to contact police. They've also created a QR code for people to share related video. And for those of you who are familiar with Sacramento, this is on 10th Street and J Street, close to Capitol Park, which means that, if I understand correctly with Capitol Park, that means that this is not too far away from the government buildings on top of it. So that is a little bit of detail on what's happening with that.
And we continue to follow breaking news at Head.
And we're not going to sit back and watch 15 minutes of video, but yeah, that's what it sounds like to me, is 3 shooters. 3 shooters and at least 4 firearms. In varying different degrees of caliber. What do we have here from our friends over at NPR? Maybe they'll print reality at one point here. Maybe, maybe not. This is what we know so far about the deadly mass shooting in Sacramento. And this is from Dustin Jones and Bill Chappelle. And remember to hit that donate button, because they can't tell you what to think if they are not paying them, or if you're not paying them, rather. So make sure that you hit that donate button, because they need your money, our money, comrade, to get those quiet microphones out there and tell you what it is that you are supposed to think. NPR, Never Printing Reality, National Progressive Radio. Let's see what they have to say. One day after 6 people died in a mass shooting in downtown Sacramento, there is very little detail of what happened. At least 12 people were hospitalized after the shooting early Sunday morning. No one is in custody, the police say, as they seek suspects in the case. Here's what we know so far. There are multiple shooters, police say. Police are asking the public to help them find anyone who played a part in the shocking crimes. Sacramento Police Chief Kathy Lester told journalists Sunday evening that investigators have already received multiple tips and videos from the public, saying, "We are deeply grateful for that." Footage of the violence was also captured by a police camera at the intersection near the shootings, she said. The chief also said police recovered a stolen handgun from the scene. Gavin Newsom said the shooting is yet another horrendous act of gun violence, brah, saying his admin is working closely with the local and state law enforcement agencies. The number of people killed stands at 6. 3 men and 3 women were killed, police say, but little else is known about the victims other than all of those killed are adults. Officers in the area were in the area and raced to the scene where they heard the shots, Lester said. They rushed to learn what happened and to perform CPR on victims, she added. Barry Asius, who runs a nonprofit that helps young people in the area, told Capital Public Radio that he went downtown less than an hour after the shooting. When I first came, I saw the victim, who was injured, draped in blood, and another person screaming about her son, another lady screaming, saying that she saw her sister take her last breath. He said, I am interested in the fact that no children were killed in this, given the fact that there was an Ellie and AJ concert going on. Now, do keep in mind, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. So, I don't know if the band had been off the stage already, if the kids had already been removed off of this, and it was just the Ellie and AJ hanging out at the bar afterwards, or what the story was with that. But typically, when you have that kind of a headliner, there usually are some kids that are around. A large fight broke out just before the gunfire. The gunfire erupted near the corner of 10th and K Streets, close to the California State Capitol, around 2 a.m., according to the Sacramento Police Department Facebook page. Cell phone video circulating online captured a fight among a large crowd of people on a sidewalk in the area of the shooting. The footage shows people running for their lives as the first shots rang out, followed by dozens more shots. It's not yet known how the fracas might be linked to the shooting. Investigators found hundreds of pieces of evidence at the scene, Lester said. What happened last night is the biggest and most recent example of what we all know, the police chief said. Gun violence is truly a crisis in our community, and it has increased not only here in Sacramento, but across the nation. So, a few things to look at with that, and I mean, this is what NPR has to say, and a lot of this is what we either knew about this from the previous 2 articles, or what we were able to infer from watching the video. This one comes from the Sacramento Bee. California has the toughest U.S. gun laws after Sacramento shooting. What else can lawmakers do? And this is why I said this was political. Now, shootings in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Sacramento are not uncommon. As much as the news media around this event would like you to believe, shootings in this area are not uncommon. Shootings that take 6 lives at the same time are a little bit less common, but hearing gunfire in these areas is not uncommon. And of course, it's only criminals that have gun because, as the article says, California has the toughest U.S. gun laws, and I promise you that Sacramento has even tougher gun laws than California proper itself. I don't know what the gun laws are in Sacramento, but I promise you they're more stringent than California's. What else can lawmakers do? And we're sitting in a situation right now where you're going to hear calls to come from Congress to say, hey, do something on a national level. Ban the guns, repeal the Second Amendment. I guarantee you that as the story gets discussed more and more, if this doesn't disappear, because again, as we talked about, there's a possibility this is gang violence, but if this story gets discussed more and more, there's going to be at least one call for Second Amendment repeal. In spite of the fact that if people could have shot back, I'm not going to stand here and say that this wouldn't have happened, but this, if you're in a situation where you're going to be shooting at people, and people could shoot back, you're going to think about that trigger pull before you do it. But let's read from the Sacramento Bee. They banned high-capacity magazines and cracked down on assault weapons. At least one of those armaments has, from what we heard over there, has what California would have considered a high-capacity magazine, because I heard 16 come from the same pitch and the same tenor within the few-second range, which implies to me that they came from the same firearm. They banned high-capacity magazines and cracked down on assault weapons. They made it so Californians have to pass background check to purchase a gun and ammunition. They prohibited buyers from having ammo or ghost gun parts shipped directly to their homes. When it comes to gun laws, California's legislators have passed some of the most stringent regulations in the country, checking off nearly every box on National Gun Control Advocates' wish list. A mass shooting early Sunday that left 6 dead and 12 wounded just a block from the Capitol, the very building where the laws were enacted, immediately prompted new calls for legislation to curb gun violence from California elected officials and gun control advocates across the nation. Clearly, given the fact that first and foremost, the fact that these gentlemen were murdering people, tells me that they are not interested in following laws. Because, you may not know this or not, but murder is illegal. So clearly the people involved in this are not interested in following laws. But second, the police have already come out and said that one of the guns is stolen. You can put every single law possible on the books, short of a mass confiscation, and even then, somebody's going to break into the fucking police lockup and go get the firearm. If they want the gun, they're going to find a way to get it. Your laws be damned. What is another law going to do to curb something in a situation where the people involved have clearly already broken 2 laws? The scourge of gun violence continues to be a crisis in our country, and we must resolve to bring an end to this carnage, Gavin Newsom, who's already signed 15 gun control laws, said Sunday in a prepared statement. Ban ghost guns, President Biden said, expressing his sorrow for the Sacramento victims. Require background checks for all gun sales. Ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazine. Repeal gun manufacturers' immunity from liability. That, in and of itself, is the stupidest idea. But I understand what they're doing. They're trying to make gun manufacturers come out and say, well, if I get sued for somebody improperly using my weapon, then I don't know if I want to make weapons anymore. And while they haven't come out and said that it was a ghost gun that did this, given the fact that it was a stolen weapon, tells me that it wasn't a ghost gun. Because if it was a ghost gun, they would have no idea that it was stolen because there'd be no fucking serial number. They know who is supposed to be in possession of one of the weapons that's on there, meaning that this ghost gun thing is complete line of fucking bullshit. Background checks for all gun sales. In California, that's already the case. Now, yes, I understand the fact, and I mean, this is how it should be all across the country anyway, that if you're not buying from a store, if I just go up to a friend and say, hey, you know, I really like the Mauser that you have there. I think that's an important historical piece. Or it's a replica of a Mauser, because an actual Mauser wouldn't fall under the background check rule because it's a historical piece. But your replica of a Mauser that you have over there, or that nice Walter that you have over there, I like that. I'll give you $400 for it. That doesn't require a background check in my state, as long as it stays in state. Now, if I go down to Illinois, to my buddy that lives down there and say, hey, that Remington of yours, I like that. I'd like to buy that. There's still a background check there because my buddy in Illinois has to go ship this to my brother-in-law in redacted. At which point I would go pick it up from there after my brother-in-law ran the background check on me. Because it's interstate. That's different. But yes, as far as I understand, in California, there's already a background check on everything. So, this is moot. And of course, ban high-capacity magazines. Already in place in California. Guess what? At least one of the firearms that was involved in the shooting had at least 16 rounds in it, which they consider in California to be a high-capacity magazine. But yes, they are going to call for much, much more gun control in an election year. But that's what we see off of that. Another one from KCRA 3. Sacramento shooting, Biden, Newsom, Mayor Darrell Steinberg, and more officials react. From Daniel Macht, which we've heard some of this already, but let's listen. I think we can listen to the mayor too. But let's look at some of this here. Public officials are expressing messages of condolence and outrage over the nation's latest mass shooting after 6 people were killed and 12 others shot early Sunday morning in downtown Sacramento. Here is what elected leaders and organizations in Sacramento are saying after the shooting. Newsom released a statement and tweeted, "We cannot let gun violence be the new normal." Well, considering he ignored the last one 5 weeks ago, and this is allegedly the first one in 5 weeks, I would not call that the new normal. Gavin Newsom tweets, "Yet another mass casualty shooting, leaving families with lost loved ones, people injured, and a community in grief. We are working closely with law enforcement to monitor the situation. We cannot continue to let gun violence be the new normal." On Sunday, President Biden responded to the shooting in a statement, which also called for banning ghost guns, also known as unregistered firearms, requiring background checks for all gun sales, and banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. As was mentioned in this, all 3 of those items are already illegal in California. Plus, they knew it was a stolen gun, so there's no way possible that at least that recovered firearm was a ghost gun. Jill, am I talking right now? Today in America, once again, mourns for another community devastated by gun violence. In a single act, in Sacramento, 6 individuals left dead and at least a dozen more injured. Families are forever changed, survivors left to heal. Wounds both visible and invisible, Biden said in the release. Mayor Steinberg tweeted that words cannot express my shock and sadness. He spoke alongside other city leaders Sunday morning and said that this morning our city has a broken heart. Well, let's listen.
Morning, everyone. I'm Darrell Steinberg, the mayor of Sacramento. I'm joined here by a number of my colleagues, Vice Mayor of the city of Sacramento, Angelique Ashby, Council members Jay Chenier, Rick Jennings, and Councilmember Katie Valenzuela, in whose district, of course, this awful event occurred. A couple of initial announcements before I make a statement. Number one, we're asking everybody to please give some space to the families. We're setting up a place of refuge and support at City Hall, which is why we're doing this event here. Secondly, the police department's Twitter and all our Twitter pages will have the QR that will allow anybody who has any information about who perpetrated this awful crime this morning to be able to report, and to report quickly, so that the police can investigate and arrest those responsible and hold them accountable. I want to thank my colleagues. I want to thank the police department for their tireless work, and I also want to thank the community-based organizations who have been up since the middle of the night, working to try to provide support and solace wherever they can. They always do that, and we're deeply appreciative. This morning, our city has a broken heart. This is a senseless and unacceptable tragedy, and I emphasize the word unacceptable. Thoughts and prayers, of course, are appropriate for the victims and their families, and the people who are still who are fighting for their lives now in the hospital. But thoughts and prayers are not nearly enough. We must
Thoughts and prayers are not nearly enough. Let's have another set of gun laws around the area that more people who come out and commit mass shootings won't follow. All right, that's what we have off of that. And I'm interested in just this tweet right here. All too familiar tragedy in Sacramento again this morning. Crime scene tape, evidence markers, devastated families, a fearful community, and much, much more. There are many contributing factors to violence, and all too familiar division is one of them. And that's important, because what Han is alleging here is that this happens all the goddamn time in Sacramento, which wouldn't surprise me. But again, there is a reason that you're hearing about this one. There is a reason that this one is on the forefront. And you don't hear about all the other ones. A, it's going to be the volume of victims, but then B, I mean, nobody seems to give a fuck about what's happening in the Ukraine anymore. Zelensky was at the Grammys and didn't even crack the trending in Twitter. We'll talk about that in just a second. That is getting ground down to a stalemate, and nobody, like, you can't tell the same story over and over again. We're going to gloss over most of what our Ukraine segment is today. Because it is, oh, well, you know, they push forces back, they push forces this way. Oh, Zelensky went to the Grammys. But now they need a new talking point, a new way to say that if you don't vote for more Democrats, the Republicans are going to let this happen all across the country. So, that's what we see coming off of that. And again, I mean, there is so much more that goes along with this. And we've unpacked so much. We spent almost an hour just talking about this. Because they're going to publicize this. We have the school shooting in South Carolina. And expect to see more of these, by the way. Over and over again. I expect to see a lot of this. All right, let's grab one from CNN. Let's shift gears and let's go talk about the Ukraine. Starting with this one here, and we've got the video of it from CNN. President Volodymyr Zelensky makes appearance at the Grammys. Reading on from Lisa Respers, France, and we'll watch the video too, but the president of the Ukraine brought a touching moment at the 64th Annual Grammy Awards on Sunday. Zelensky offered a speech that began, "The war! What's more opposite than music? The sounds of ruined cities and killed people. Our children drew swooping rockets, not shooting stars," he said. "Over 400 children have been injured and 153 children died. We will never see them drawing." You know what? Let's listen to this speech.
Our musicians wear body armor instead of tuxedo. They sing to the wounded in hospitals, even to those who can't hear them, but the music will break through anyway. We defend our freedom to live, to love, to sound. On our land, we are fighting Russia, which brings horrible silence with its bombs, the dead silence. Feel the silence. With your music, feel it today to tell our story.
Rain down, freedom, rain down, till we're all free.
Look, no offense, President Zelensky, but I've been watching this situation since it started, and even looking and peeking through and opening up the propaganda like a set of fucking blinds. Even I know, and again, somebody who has only read the propaganda that the Western media is putting out, I know that you are the furthest thing from anti-war on the face of this goddamn planet. Zelensky has been outspoken in gathering international support for the country since it's been invaded by Russian military forces in February. He tied that to the music industry's biggest night by saying, "War does not let us choose who survives and who stays in eternal silence. Our musicians wear body armor instead of tuxedos." I guess I gotta put the dark rasp on his voice when I talk in Zelensky voice. "They sing to wounded in hospitals." He added, "The music will break through anyway," and spoke of his country defending its freedom to live, to love, to sound. Zelensky implored those listening to tell the truth about war. "On your social networks, on TV, support us in any way you can. Any, but not silence. And then peace will come. To all our cities, war is destroying," he said. "Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Volnovaka, Mariupol, and others. They are legends already. But I have dreamed of them living and free like you on Grammy stage." His speech was followed by a performance of Virtue Signal by singer John Legend, who, as joined by Ukrainian artists Mika Newton, Lyuba Yakimchuk, and Swizuna Igidan. Yeah, he did that. Which, again, we start to see stunts like this. To come back out and try to get more people coming in and desperately gripping to their televisions and watching the Grammys saying, "Oh my god, what do I do? Zelensky's on there. We've got to watch the Grammys, don't we? Oh my god, the horror of what's going on over here." Look, this was just another publicity stunt to get more people watching the Grammys, which I'd be willing to bet if we look back at this, up until that point, again, was one of the lowest watched Grammys ever. I didn't even know the Grammys were going on until, well, one of the artists that we actually listened to on this playlist won a Grammy last night, and he posted the fact that he got nominated on Instagram on Saturday. And that's the only reason that I knew the Grammys were going on this weekend. Literally. It was Button Masher, by the way, and Button Masher and the 8-Bit Big Band won for their arrangement. So congratulations to them. Alright, let's look over some of the details of what's going on over there. Ukrainian forces take areas near Kiev amid fears of traps. From Nebykina and Uras Karmanow. Ukrainian troops moved cautiously to retake the territory north of the country's capital on Saturday, using cables to pull the bodies of civilians off streets of one of the towns out of fear that Russian forces may have left them booby-trapped. Zelensky warned that departing Russian troops were creating a catastrophic situation for civilians by leaving mines around homes, abandoned equipment, and even the bodies of those killed. His claims could not be independently verified. No, it's wartime propaganda. Could they possibly have done so? It's possible. Is it going to be as widespread as Zelensky's going to make it sound? Probably not, because that's a lot of expensive munitions to sit back, especially if you're in the process of withdrawing. What's the end game? Dissociated Press journalists in Bucha, a suburb northwest of Kiev, watched as Ukrainian soldiers, backed by a column of tanks and other armored vehicles, used cables to drag bodies off the streets from a distance. Locals said the dead, the AP counted at least 6, were civilians killed without provocation by departing Russian soldiers. So, did we go back to that scene in Monty Python? I need a bell. I need a bell over here. Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead! Those people were just walking, and they shot them without any reason. Bang, said a Bucha resident who declined to give his name, citing safety reasons. In next neighborhood, Stekolka, it was even worse. They would shoot without asking any question. Ukraine and its Western allies reported the mounting evidence of Russia withdrawing its forces from around Kiev and building its troop strength in eastern Ukraine. The visible shift did not mean the country faced a reprieve from more than 5 weeks of war, or that the more than 4 million refugees who have fled Ukraine will return soon. Yeah, dude, they aren't going back ever. Zelensky said he expects the departed towns to endure missile and rocket strikes from afar, and for the battle in the east to be intense. In his nightly video address on Saturday, the Ukrainian leader said the country's troops were not allowing the Russians to retreat without a fight. They're shelling them. They're destroying everyone that they can. Yes, this guy is anti-war. We're not going to let them just leave. We are going to shoot at them when they're on their way out. We are going to shell and shoot. This guy got on the Grammys and called himself anti-war. So, there you go. Kiev is apparently back in Ukrainian hands. From CNBC, Russia faces a barrage of new sanctions after accusations of atrocities in Bucha. From Natasha Tarak, the U.S. and its European allies are preparing to deliver another slew of sanctions on Russia following a mounting evidence of war crimes committed by its forces in Ukraine. That's European Council, so we're not going to throw the Ukrainian accent on that. The European Union condemns in the strongest possible terms the reported atrocities committed by Russian armed forces, in a number of occupied Ukrainian towns that have now been liberated, a statement from the European Council said on Monday. Ukraine has accused Russian forces of carrying out a massacre in the towns of Bucha, where it said 300 residents were killed. The massacres in the town of Bucha and other Ukrainian towns will be inscribed in the list of atrocities committed on European soil. The European Council statement said haunting photos of residential streets strewn with bodies have been published by international news outlets. Russia is denying the accusations, calling the photos another provocation from Ukraine. A German government spokesperson told reporters Monday that even further sanctions could be decided in the coming days. Germany's defense minister has also said the EU must discuss banning imports of Russian gas. Will they do it? Probably not. Will they talk about it? Oh, hell yes. There has to be a response. Such crimes must not remain unanswered, Christine Lambrecht said on Sunday. But Poland says the biggest obstacle to this is Germany itself. It's Germany that is main roadblock on sanctions, Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said on Monday. So far, Berlin has refused to embargo oil and gas imports from Russia, saying that Europe depends too heavily upon them. Some 40% of Europe's gas is provided by Russia, and Germany imports almost 60% of its natural gas from that country. So, again, as I just said, they're going to talk a very, 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 very big game and not do a goddamn thing. From CBS, Ukraine documents alleged atrocities by retreating Russians. Talked a little bit about this. Let's grab a little bit more off of this. From no author given. Ukraine's troops found brutalized bodies with bound hands, gunshot wounds to the head, and signs of torture from Russian soldiers. After Russian soldiers withdrew from the outskirts of Kiev, authorities said on Sunday, sparking new calls for war crimes investigation and sanctions against Russia. Dissociated Press journalists in Bucha, a small city northwest of the capital, saw the bodies of at least 9 people in civilian clothes who appeared to have been killed at very close range. At least 2 had their hands tied behind their backs. The Dissociated Press also saw 2 bodies wrapped in plastic, bound with tape, and thrown in a ditch. Authorities said they're documenting evidence of alleged atrocities to add to their case for prosecuting Russians for war crimes. To convict International Criminal Court, prosecutors will need to show a pattern of indiscriminate, deadly assaults on civilians during Russian invasion. But oddly enough, I don't think they have to show proof that it was actually the Russians, because there wouldn't be a lot of proof to go with that. Alexei Arestovich, an advisor to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, said scores of residents were found slain in the streets of Bucha and the Kiev suburbs of Irpin and Hostomel in what looked like a scene from a horror movie. Some people were shot in the head and had their hands bound, and some of the bodies showed signs of torture. Arestovich said there were reports of rapes, he said. Zelensky told Face the Nation on Sunday that the Russians were committing genocide in Ukraine, and he called for Russia to be held accountable for war crimes. And there is some of this. And again, it is very possible that this happened. I'm not going to come out here and say that this is impossible. There's no way. I'm not going to say that. But what I am going to say is, as has been mentioned before, Ukraine is being defended in the U.S. like it's the 51st state. If you question the narrative, you are considered to be a Nazi, a Russian sympathizer, a Putin puppet. If you just come in and say, hey, I've got some questions because I'm only hearing this from one side. You're the most hated enemy in the world if you just ask the questions. So do keep that in mind as we come off of this. Are things like this going to happen from low-level Russians who are on the ground? Yes, absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely this is going to happen at some case. But to be widespread as the way they're saying, I have questions. I do. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I have questions. And why are you calling me a bigot for asking questions unless you have something to hide? And this has been, in and of itself, on top of the fact that, yes, there was a war going on, and we know that there's a war going on. This has been a major war of propaganda on top of everything else. And you should be not only allowed to, but encouraged to ask questions to make sure you're getting the right story and not hanging an innocent man. From the Dissociated Press, Russia blames Ukraine for fuel depot blast. Kiev denies the role. From No Author Given. A fire explosion rocked a Russian fuel depot near the border around dawn on Friday, and Moscow said Ukraine had attacked the facility, but Kiev denied any involvement. There was no independent confirmation of details about the incident. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov said two Ukrainian Mi-24 helicopters had entered Russian airspace at an extremely low altitude and attacked a civilian oil storage facility on the outskirts of the city of Belgorod. He said the facility was supplying petroleum to civilian transport only. The oil base has nothing to do with Russian armed forces. Regional Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov said two workers at the depot were injured. He said, but Russian media cited a statement from the state oil company Rosneft that denied anyone was hurt. More than 300 firefighters battled the blaze using a helicopter and a special firefighting train, the Belgorod mayor's office said. Gladkov said he met with the residents who were moved away from their homes to a nearby sports facility. He also posted photos of craters and a metal fragment in a rural area where he said the explosions had damaged a power line and a broken window. It would not be the first attack reported inside Russia since the war began, February 24th, although there has been nothing as dramatic. Alexei Danilov, Secretary of Ukraine's National Security Council, denied Ukraine was responsible. For some reason, they say that we did it, but in fact this does not correspond with reality, he said on Ukrainian television. Well, I guess my first question would be, who else did it? And I'm willing to hear you out. If you can show me where somebody else did this and it wasn't you, you know, you can always just pull the Shaggy defense. Hey man, just tell her it wasn't you. It wasn't me. Was it a sanctioned attack from Kiev? I would actually say probably not. But was it propagandized? Maybe a bunch of 22-year-olds who looked up and said, Russia is enemy, man. Let us come together and do something about Russia, the great devil in our state. And they all got fucking bombed on Polish vodka. And went over there with a bunch of Molotovs and blew the fucking place up. Now, Russia's saying it was helicopters. I don't even know if it was helicopters or not. I don't think a bunch of people got drunk and took helicopters over there. But I'm willing to hear both sides of this, which a lot of people in the U.S. are not. So, with that, all we know at this point for certain is that the fuel depot was blown up. And we go from there. All right, from CNBC. Demo says confluence of inflation, Ukraine war may dramatically increase risks ahead for the U.S. So we're going to be moving off of the Ukrainian stuff and moving on to some of the economy stuff. Do we want to do this now? Or do we want to move this? I'm going to actually move this. We're going to do some other stuff first. All right. Let's talk about the former president, the January 6th stuff. So remember last week when we got the breathless reporting that 7 hours of Trump's phone logs were missing? That means this is Watergate all over again. He's going to prison. We finally got him. Well, it turns out not so much. And of course, this is coming from CNN. This isn't coming from some major right-wing outlet. From CNN, official review of Trump phone logs from January 6 finds record is complete. From Zachary Cohen, Caitlin Polance, Jamie Gangle, Ryan Nobles, Annie Grayer, and Ashley Semler. Geez, how many people does it take to write an article? In the 7 hours during which the White House records show no phone calls to or from then-President Trump on January 6, 2021. Among the calls that are conspicuously absent is one Trump made to then-Vice President Mike Pence that morning from the Oval Office. While the call is not specifically noted in the presidential diary or the presidential call log, its existence has been corroborated by multiple sources who were with Trump and Pence that day, including former aides, who testified before the House Select Committee investigating the U.S. Capitol attack. And it's not the only call Trump is known to have made in that time frame that is not reflected in the records. The mystery of the 7-hour gap has fueled furious speculation as to why the calls are missing. That includes allegations that Trump was using burner phones, which he has denied, or that the logs were purposely suppressed. But the gap might have a less mysterious explanation. Oh, a less mysterious explanation, you say? Weird, it's like Bob Woodward made something up to keep people from talking about the Hunter Biden laptop. But no, of course, we need to just take what Bob Woodward says at face value every fucking time. And as I mentioned, every time that Biden does something tremendously stupid, like calls for a regime change in Russia, or the Hunter Biden laptop thing is coming up and they start sniffing too close to Hunter, all of a sudden, hey, we had another breaking development in the saga of January 6th. And Bob Woodward is always at the center of it. Every fucking time. According to multiple sources familiar with Trump's phone behavior and the White House switchboard records, the January 6th log reflects Trump's typical phone habits. He mainly placed calls through the switchboard when he was in the residence, but rarely used it when he was in the Oval Office. The fact that the log does not show calls on January 6, 2021 from the Oval Office is not unusual, said the sources, because Trump typically had staff either place calls directly for him on landlines or cell phones. Those calls would not be noted in the switchboard log. The 6 pages of White House switchboard logs for January 6, 2021 are complete. Based on an official review of the White House records, according to a source familiar with the matter, there are no missing pages, and the 7-hour gap is likely explained by use of White House landlines, White House cell phones, and personal cell phones that do not go through the switchboard. The missing calls also underscore something more endemic, the imperfect and antiquated system of tracking a president's communications. So there you go. When we first started talking about it, what did I tell you? It's nothing. It's a nothing burger. There's nothing there. And not only are you hearing this from me, a supported, Nazistic, right-wing, authoritarian morning program, yes, authoritarian, You're now hearing it from CNN. Fuck you. I was right. Again. From Insider, President Biden says Trump should be persecuted for the January 6th assault on the Capitol and is frustrated with AG Garland for not taking decisive action, says report. Yes, let's go after our political enemies again. From Bethany Dawson. President Biden believes that Trump should be prosecuted over the January 6th selfie fest, the New York Times reports. Brandon also described Trump as a threat to democracy, according to sources the newspaper interviewed. The Times said the report was based on interviews with more than a dozen people, including officials in the Biden admin and people with knowledge of the president's thinking, all requested anonymity with the report. Biden is frustrated with the U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, who is investigating the riots, according to people close to the president. Biden has described Garland as a ponderous judge and says he wants him to take more decisive action over the Capitol siege, according to the Times. Elaine Luria, a Virginia Democrat on the House committee set up to investigate the selfie fest, told Garland to do your job so we can do ours. Mary Trump, who is desperately clinging to relevance by writing a book that nobody bought, has previously said that Garland is an idiot for not prosecuting her uncle over the riot. Please buy my book. The January 6th Selfie Fest Committee recently said in a new court filing that they believe Trump had broken law in trying to overturn the 2020 election results. The Justice Department has recently expanded its investigation into the Selfie Fest to include an analysis of the organization of Trump's Stop the Steal rally ahead of the riot at the Capitol. And yes, just to remember, they breached the fences, they breached the barriers with Ray Epps at the front while Trump was still speaking. He still had a good 7 minutes left of his speech when the fence was breached. That's important. And yes, we are sitting at this point where they're coming out here and telling you, absolutely, they're going to prosecute their political enemies. And do keep in mind what that means for you. And by the way, many of them are hoping that if they put Trump in prison, that is going to slap the rest of you in line and keep you from standing up and questioning the establishment. Oh, fuck, I could get prosecuted for standing up to the establishment? Oh, yes, hail Biden, hail establishment. That's what they're hoping for. And I don't think it's going to work out for them. Realistically, Garland knows. Garland is a smart man. He's an asshole, but he's a smart man. And he knows, first and foremost, he knows he doesn't have fucking shit. And an acquittal would damage the social fabric of this country more than prosecuting a political enemy. But he also knows full well that prosecuting a political enemy is going to turn out poorly for him and his side. He knows. And Biden doesn't know what's going on. I don't care what these aides come back out and say. Biden has no fucking clue what's going on here. And as I mentioned, because I saw, Call to Activism had tweeted out the other day of, oh, well, Trump needs to be prosecuted for his role in this, and we need to use the 14th Amendment to make sure that he can't run again. Dude, if he is as wildly unpopular as you say, as massively unpopular as you say, because it's these same groups, Call to Activism, who say that Trump is the least popular president in history, and if he runs a third time, he'll get like 4 votes across the entire country. Well, let him run again. If he's as wildly as unpopular as you guys say that he is, he'll never get reelected. Biden will coast to reelection if he's as wildly as unpopular as you say that he is. And on top of that, he'll knock another bombing brown kids fucking neocon away from getting the nomination. Where's the fucking downside to this argument? From the Blaze. White House officials won't confirm whether the president has discussed pardoning Hunter Biden. From Samuel Mangold, Lennet. On Thursday, White House officials refused to discuss whether there had been internal conversations about President Biden pardoning his son Hunter or brother James should their foreign business dealings land them in legal trouble. The Washington Examiner reported that when asked about this, White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield said, "That's not a hypothetical I'm going to entertain. I don't have anything to add." When asked about the president's knowledge of his son's and brother's complicated international business dealings and financial interests, Bedingfield provided reporters roundabout answers and avoided engaging with the questions posed. One reporter asked, "Is it your understanding that the president's view that he looks at all of Hunter's business dealings made with his uncle, neither Hunter or James committed any crimes or did anything that was unlawful?" Uh-oh. This page isn't responding. Fucking Blaze, I swear. You know, if they'd let me turn the ad blocker on, this wouldn't have a problem. But the Blaze is one of those, "You have your ad blocker on! You can't read our articles!" And then look at all the shit that they have in the corner. "DeSantis obliterates! Are you dying for better digestion?" We pointed to statements that were made in the fall of 2020 when we addressed these questions. Bedingfield replied, "I don't have anything additional to add to this podium." So, he probably will. And it'll probably get glossed over by the mainstream media. Like, "Oh, well, he's just a good father who's pardoning his children. Look how evil those evil Trump kids are." From CNBC. Now let's get into some finance. Dimon says confluence of inflation, Ukraine war may dramatically increase risks ahead for the U.S. From Hugh Sun. Jamie Dimon, CEO and chairman of the biggest U.S. bank by assets, pointed to a potentially unprecedented combination of risks facing the country in his annual shareholder letter. 3 forces are likely to shape the world over the next several decades: a U.S. economy rebounding from the pinko-pox pandemic, high inflation that will usher in an era of rising rates, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and that the resulting humanitarian crisis now underway, according to Dimon. Each of these 3 factors mentioned above is unique in its own right: the dramatic stimulus-fueled recovery from the pinko-pox pandemic, the likely need for rapidly raising rates, and the required reversal of QE, and the war in Ukraine and the sanctions on Russia, Dimon wrote. They present completely different circumstances that we've experienced in the past, and their confluence may dramatically increase the risks ahead, he wrote. While it's possible and hopeful that all these events have peaceful resolutions, we should prepare for the potential negative outcomes. Dimon's letter, read widely in business circles because of JP Morgan's CEO's status as the industry's most prominent spokesman, took a more downcast tone with its missive last year, while he wrote extensively about challenges facing the country, including economic inequality and political dysfunction. That letter broadcast his beliefs that the U.S. was in the midst of a boom that could easily run into 2023. Now, however, the outbreak of the biggest European conflict since World War II has changed things, roiling markets, realigning alliances, and restructuring global trade patterns. He wrote that introduces both risks and opportunities for the U.S. and other democracies, according to Dimon. What boom? No, I'm dead serious. What fucking boom? There was no boom. Our gas prices were already rising. They were still hovering around the $3 mark even before the Russian sanctions came back in, and now they're hovering around the $4 mark. What boom are you talking about? We still had businesses that couldn't afford to put people, CEOs, and the owners of these small businesses having to go work on the floor rather than looking at the books and making sure that everybody was getting paid because they can't find people to come back out of here. What fucking boom. But hey, big banks and big donors to the Democrat Party have a vested interest in telling you that this is all a boom. Stop looking over here and stop looking at reality, you bigot. However, the Fed's favorite inflation measure hits a record high from Ben Ziesloft. The Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, the Federal Reserve's preferred metric for tracking inflation, is rising at a 6.4% year-over-year rate as of February. The increase surpasses the 6.1% rate charted in January, marking the highest inflation since 1982. Without considering volatile categories like food and fuel, the PCE-PI climbed 5.4% year-over-year. Rising price levels have been a major criticism of Biden's first year in office, with 83% of Americans responding affirmatively to a poll asking whether increased prices of everyday items caused you or your household any hardship over the past month. Likewise, voters were also asked about the recent surge in gas prices. 39% blamed the trend on the Biden admin, 21% blamed gas and oil sanctions placed by the Biden admin and Western allies on Russia, 18% blamed oil and gas companies, and 8.5% blamed the pinko fucking pox. Just so you know, that means that 60% have placed blame on Biden policy. Whether it be the admin and its drilling of oil, which is the most common, or the sanctions. That is a full 60% that say that the blame falls squarely on the Biden admin, in one form or another. Last month, the Federal Reserve, which is charged with manipulating the money supplied to target stable inflation and maximum employment, raised interest rates for the first time since December of 2018. The 0.25% bump from near zero levels is an attempt to tap the brakes on the inflation. Indeed, the Fed is predicting 6 more rate increases in 2022, 3 in 23, and 0 in 24. Well, yes, because the housing market will have completely crashed by then, and you will have ruined much of the middle class. Good job. Indicators of economic activity and employment have continued to strengthen. Job gains have been strong in recent months, honk honk, and the unemployment rate has declined substantially, the central bank's Federal Open Market Committee explained in a statement. Inflation remains elevated, reflecting supply and demand imbalances related to the pandemic, higher energy prices, and broader price pressures. But regardless, there you are. Record high once again. The title card for today's episode looks like they're going to go talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson today as well, according to the trends. That's live. Colton Pope. Let's actually go back through this again. So Shannon Sharpe tweets out, anyone who knows hiring that owns a gas station. Anyone knows someone hiring that owns a gas station, you get a discount if you work at an establishment. Do people still siphon off gas? It was a thing when I was growing up. I never got a discount when I worked at a gas station. I never once got a discount on gas when I worked at the gas station. But yeah, $118 to fill 17.45 gallons. Let's actually get the calculator back up, because I want to see what that effective rate is. That is $6.76 a gallon. What the fuck are you filling up with? $6.75.9 is what that is per gallon. Holy shit, what are you filling up with? And where? So I don't go there. Jeez. And Colton Polk comes back out and replies back, Shannon, do you still hate Donald? And this is the big one. Shannon Sharpe quote tweets this back and says, I'd rather pay $20 a gallon than have Trump in office. Hope that answers your question. And he got dragged for that. John Puhak says, did you prove you were black by voting for Biden because he told you to? Jacob Airy at the Daily Wire, the elitist class is okay if we suffer as long as there are no mean tweets. And more, and more, and more. Same energy from that dumb giraffe, literally your mom. Great follow, by the way. You can't afford $8 a gallon gasoline, then buy a $50,000 car, you fucking idiot. I would add $50,000 electric car, but same energy. Jessica O'Donnell, I believe also of the Daily Wire. Democrats 2022, their platform. Stop being poor! And yes, I would say that even going down into the Biden admin, the faithfuls, the hopefuls, the people that believe that Biden is going to save them all and that he is their messiah because he saved them from the mean tweets, even the majority of them on the ground are looking at this and starting to question, oh shit, dude, I couldn't afford $20 a gallon of gas. This might be going a little bit too far, but you know who could afford $20 a gallon of gas? A former Denver Broncos tight end. I was about to say wide receiver, but that is because that I am, given the time period and the time frame of what's going on, much more familiar with Shannon's brother Sterling, who was a wide receiver for several years for the Green Bay Packers, including the years when I started learning about what football was. But yes, of course, former tight end and NFL commentator as well, Shannon Sharpe, can afford $20 a gallon of gas. Of course he can. This is how out of touch the elites are. Oops. And then that goes back into my Twitter feed. So thank you, Shannon Sharpe, for that. On top of that, in line with White House hopes, rising gas prices lead to surge in electric car interest. Buy/lease the electric car. Live in the pod. Eat the bug. Because we told you to. Because if you don't, you're a bigot. From Ben Ziesloft. Oops. I don't want the calculator. I want the live chat. A nationwide surge in prices at the pump is leading more Americans to consider buying electric cars, a move favored by the Biden admin. According to a report from Cars.com, a company that gives car buyers data, resources, and digital tools needed to make informed buying decisions, the number of searches about electric vehicles on the platform has nearly doubled since last year, an increase in 173% from February 24th to March 25th. Well, first off, I don't want to get my information from Cars.com because they don't realize that it has nearly tripled. If you've increased by almost 200%, that's almost tripled. That's over doubled. An increase of 100% would be doubled. You fucking morons. The war in Ukraine, proposed infrastructure legislation, rising gas prices, and supply chain issues are just a few drivers of the market volatility that have spurred a consumer interest in EVs, explained the site. Perceived as a purchase that hedges against market swings, especially gas prices, EVs are gaining awareness and popularity, but actual purchases still lag due to extremely limited supply and several barriers to entry, with the EVs constituting less than 1% of vehicles on the road. Cars.com added that 55% of non-EV owners indicate they're considering an EV for the next purchase, and more than two-thirds would consider switching to electric if gas prices keep rising. However, 52% of Americans consider cost to be a salient obstacle to buying an EV. Recent macro events, including historic inflation, rapidly rising gas prices, and debate over oil production and supply have transformed consumers' mere curiosity about EVs to an unprecedented level of interest. Cars.com editor-in-chief Jenny Newman said automakers need to ramp up production, but until the supply chain shortages level out, an extreme lack of available EVs can't keep up with the growing demand in the current market. And again, I'm not one of these people out there who drives a pickup truck and says, never will I ever have an EV. I have concerns about electric vehicles, especially considering the OnStar debacle that we just saw, and I know that the onboard software for an EV is even more stringent and more in control of the vehicle than it is just for OnStar. Like with OnStar, you still have steering. They still can't come back in and touch the brakes. They can't just stop the vehicle. They can't shut it down in the middle of the road. They can just take away your electric throttle. So you can still go, and you still will go. You'll just do so at idle, essentially. And I do actually believe they can shut the car down remotely as well, but they didn't in that particular situation. Possibly because that would have taken away power steering and possibly been more dangerous for the people inside. But I digress on what goes on with the OnStar side of things with that. From what I understand, especially with people saying that Elon Musk should just shut down all the Teslas in Russia, that EVs programming is much more pervasive than that. And I look at that and I say, that's really the only barrier. As far as the actual engine goes for the EV, I think EVs are cool. If they weren't so pervasive on the satellite system, I would consider having one, even if it's just a little runaround car for the compound. I mean, I've driven an electric golf cart around before. It's no different. Just a little runaround to go around the compound and go check out places. It's really not as bad as something you would think. But there's a supply crunch to them, and if people get more interested and try to buy more and more at the same time, you're going to see that price drive up. And yes, you also have the aspect of they are monitoring everything you do in an EV. So I'm really not that interested in them, but the actual concept of an electric vehicle is fucking cool. But regardless, most people out there still can't go out and buy a $50,000 electric car. And for those of you over on Twitter that say, oh, well, you could go get a good used Honda electric car for $10,000. Well, if 300 million people all come together to try to buy those used electric Hondas at the same time, what do you think is going to happen to that price? You fucking morons. From Reuters, UK declines to rule out new oil exploration despite climate report from Noah Browning. The UK will not commit to halting new oil exploration in the North Sea, the government energy body told Reuters, despite a warning from the world's top energy watchdog to rein in fossil fuel spending to achieve climate goals. But hey, now that the UK is not the EU anymore, they can turn around and say, oh, you fucking wankers, go get fucked. The UK is due to host the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, Scotland in November and commission the International Energy Agency to chart a new path towards net zero emissions by 2050. The agency published its findings last week, but its recommendation that fossil fuel investment be halted sits uneasily with the deal the UK government reached in March to continue allowing the North Sea offshore oil licensing in exchange for pledges to cut emissions. We're working hard to drive down the demand for fossil fuels, however there will continue to be ongoing demand for oil and gas. The UK Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy said in a response to emailed questions from Reuters. So they're ready to go back and be independent from Russia, even if they have to go tap into their own reserves. Which is good. Hey, maybe they can be the net exporter back to the EU, since they're no longer a part of it. I bet you it sounds like a money-making opportunity for the UK. From CNN. Press Secretary Psaki plans to depart White House for MSDNC in the coming weeks. From Oliver Darcy and Brian Stelter, the unreliable source. White House Press Secretary Red-Haired Bobblehead plans to on departing the Biden admin in the coming weeks and heading to MSDNC. Two people familiar with the matter told CNN on Friday. Bobblehead has not officially signed a contract with the progressive cable news network, but the talks are in the advanced stages, the people said. Axios, which first broke the news, reported that Bobblehead will host a show for NBC's streaming platform Peacock. She will also appear on MSDNC shows. MSDNC declined to comment. And there are a few moving pieces to this as well. This is not just the fact of you got a better job opportunity. There are some other things that go with it. Now, to go back and to be the propaganda mouthpiece for the White House, and then to go on MSDNC and be the propaganda mouthpiece for the White House still, I mean, this is a sideways move in terms of what it is that she's actually doing. But there are some other aspects. There are people that are saying this is rats fleeing the sinking ship, and you know what? I can see that. I can see the rats fleeing the sinking ship because Red-Haired Bobblehead is looking at this, looking at the fact. I think a lot of people are looking at the fact that they can't honk the midterms as much as they want to. Biden's approval is at a historic low. This is going to reflect back in to the progressive base and the Democrat base. And the progressive base, no matter how much they're propagandized to, is still fucking pissed off that they didn't get their student loan repayment. They're still pissed off over the fact that they didn't get the corporation shut down, that the corporation still exists, that they still have to go to work, that they can't just be an artist and paint and do slam poetry for a living and be taken care of by the government. So they're losing support off that aspect. It's not that that these people are going to suddenly go back and Republican. They're not. They're just probably going to stay home and abstain and not go to vote. Because why would they? Why would they go out? They're not going to get what they fucking want. And now Psaki has to come back and explain to the press and to Peter Doocy why the Biden admin is not just laying the hammer down and doing everything by executive fiat, which they're probably going to do. Much to the chagrin of most of America, they're probably going to lay the hammer down and do that. So she's looking for a way where she can still get probably a similar salary to what she's getting as the White House mouthpiece. And still be somewhat relevant. So I don't know. Again, there's no confirmation of this coming from the White House, so we don't know exactly what's happening off of this. There's been no details that are given to this, and we don't even know what she's going to do on MSDNC. I know I'm not going to watch it. Alright, from the Daily Wire. Oh yes, the story in two parts from the Daily Wire and the Blaze, one right next to the other. From the Daily Wire, Biden invokes God to explain why parents should affirm trans identity. I didn't even look to see if there's video in this. Please tell me there's video in this. There is not video in this. Lame. President Biden referred to the Bible while explaining why parents should be affirming their ostensibly transgender children's identity. To everyone celebrating Transgender Day of Visibility, I want you to know that your president sees you. Jill, Kamala, Doug, our entire admin sees you for who you are. Made in an image of God and deserving of dignity, respect, and support. The Commander-in-Chief said in a video commemorating International Transgender Day of Visibility. There is video. Oh, we can watch this. I should have done it in a new tab, but we can fix that at the time. Let's listen. Actually, while we're listening here, I might have to step away from my desk for a moment.
Everyone's celebrating Transgender Day of Visibility. I want you to know that your president sees you. Jill, Kamala, Doug, our entire administration sees you for who you are, made in the image of God and deserving of dignity, respect, and support. But we know it's hard when there are those out there who don't see you and don't respect you. For example, the onslaught of anti-transgender state laws attacking you and your families is simply wrong. This administration is standing up for you against all these hateful bills. And we're committed to advancing transgender equality in the classroom, on the playing field, at work, in our military, in our housing and healthcare systems, everywhere, simply everywhere. Today, we're announcing even more steps, but there's always more work to do to end the epidemic of violence against transgender women of color and girls of color, to ensure transgender seniors can age with dignity, and to finally pass a bipartisan Equality Act, to help transgender persons around the world live free from discrimination and violence. Above all, to be there with you. To parents of transgender children, affirming your child's identity is one of the most powerful things you can do to keep them safe and healthy. To any transgender American who's struggling, please know that you're not alone. To parents and children alike, please ask for help and know this: you're so brave, you belong, and we have your back. God bless you all. Be brave.
So that is Biden again telling us about the fact that you're made in the image of God. Oh, okay. Here's one question that I have: is transgender seniors, is that really that big of a thing? Like this seems to be, and of course I know that there are people out there that I know that are transgender that will get pissed over the fact that I'm saying ROGD, rapid onset gender dysphoria, but there is an effect of that going on through Gen Z. Sorry, Spanish Abby. It stays. And a lot of this it's a rapid onset thing in the younger generations. I don't think that there's a lot going on in the senior community, but yeah, God created man in his own image, a reality Christians have indeed pointed to throughout history as the foundation for human equality. However, the passage which adds that male and female he created them also happens to be the foundation for the gender binary. We know it's hard when there are those out here who don't see you, don't respect you. For example, the onslaught of anti-transgender state laws attacking you and your family is simply wrong. So yes, he has invoked God to tell you. God and the Bible to tell you why you should be transgender. But coming over onto the Blaze on the other side of this, from the Blaze, you can't transcend God's creation. North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson's rousing speech about transgender movement resurfaces to much fanfare. From the Blaze, the transgender topic has become a hot-button issue in the recent weeks because of the dominance of transgender swimmer Leah Thomas and Florida's new parental rights law, while corporate media has pushed a transgender agenda. A year-old video clip went viral this weekend with social media pushing back against the narrative. Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina has gone viral for his scathing take on the matter. North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson delivered a sermon about the rise of people identifying as transgender last August. The blistering speech resurfaced this weekend on social media and immediately went viral. According to the BizPac Review, Robinson delivered his remarks in the Upper Room Church of God in Christ in Raleigh. Robinson did not shy away from his criticisms of the transgender movement among his controversial statements from the address of "There are only two genders." So Biden goes in and he cites God as saying, this is why you're transgender. And a year ago, Robinson tells you, don't mess with God's creation. And yes, we have some video on that as well. Let's listen.
There's something else I'm not supposed to say. Ain't but two genders.
Jesus Christ, that's loud.
Two genders. Ain't nothing but men and women. And I can already see WRL out there. They got they licking their pencils right now, trying to write fierce as they can. Get every word of this here. Get every word of this. You can go to the doctor and get cut up. You can go down to the dress shop and get made up. You can go down there and get drugged up. But at the end of the day, you were just a drugged up, dressed up, made up, cut up, man or woman. You ain't changed what God put in you, that DNA. You can't transcend God's creation. I don't care how hard you try. The transgender movement in this country, if there's a movement in this country that is demonic and that is full of the spirit of Antichrist, it is the transgender movement. It's time for grown-ups and time for Christians to start standing up and being unafraid to tell the truth. Come after me if you want to. I don't care. You want my head? Here it is right here. Come on, come get it. I don't care because it's time for us to stand up. Now, I'm not afraid to stand up and tell the truth about that issue. They're dragging our kids down into the pit of hell, trying to teach them that mess in our schools. Tell you like this, that ain't got no place at no school. 2 plus 2 don't equal transgender. It equals 4. We need to get back to teaching them how to read instead of teaching them how to go to hell.
Based. So that is your stark contrast to Biden telling you that it's because that you're made in the image of God that you're transgender. All right. Some California news here. California corporate diversity law is ruled unconstitutional. Shocked Pikachu. An LA judge has ruled that California's landmark law mandating the corporate boards have ethnic or LGBT members violates the state constitution. Friday's brief ruling granted summary judgment to Judicial Watch, a conservative legal group that sought permanent injunction against the measure. The lawsuit argued it was illegal to use taxpayer funds to enforce a law that violates Equal Protection Clause of the California Constitution by mandating a quota based on race, ethnicity, sexual preference, and transgender status. Yes, if you disadvantage the white people in your state, that is still a violation of equal protection. And I'm sure there were a lot of people in California that were shocked to find this out. Shocked. Just shocked, I say shocked. Oh, by the way, The Hill has removed its comment section, as there were many other forums for readers to participate in the conversation. We invite you to join the discussion on Facebook and Twitter. No shit they did, because this one would have been a fucking doozy. From Politico. Judge upholds Ghislaine Maxwell's sex trafficking conviction. From the Associated Press. A U.S. judge refused to throw out Ghislaine Maxwell's sex trafficking conviction Friday, despite a juror's failure to disclose before the trial began that he'd been a victim of childhood sexual abuse. Maxwell, a British socialite, was convicted in December of helping the millionaire Jeffrey Epstein sexually abuse several teenage girls. U.S. Judge Ellison J. Nathan declined to order a new trial weeks after questioning the juror under oath in a New York courtroom about why he failed to disclose his personal history as an abuse survivor on a questionnaire during the jury selection process. The juror said he had skimmed way too fast through the questionnaire and did not intentionally give the wrong answer to the question about sex abuse. "I didn't lie in order to get on this jury," he said. In her opinion, Nathan said the juror's failure to disclose his prior sexual abuse during the jury selection was highly unfortunate, but not deliberate. The judge also concluded the juror harbored no bias toward the defendant and could serve as a fair and impartial juror. So, now we go on to see if they can get it appealed, because they're not getting a new trial anymore. Well, oh, I'm so sad. Realistically, I know that coming down and prosecuting Maxwell is not really going to do anything about any of this here, because you have child sex trafficking going on here, but you haven't looked into any of the customers. just the person who was selling. We've got the little black book. We know a fair amount of who the customers are. Of course, there would have to be investigation as to who the customers are and who was in the book that was a customer and who wasn't. But essentially, Maxwell was a stand-in for the Hollywood elite. Just like Epstein was going to be as well. Had he not honk honk killed himself, honk honk. They were going to be the stand-ins. They were going to take the fall for all the people they were providing for. And that was going to be the end of it. And now Maxwell is sitting off in a prison, and Allison Nathan probably just got a very, very large donation to her new house, or her new sports car, or whatever it is that she just is about to buy brand new with all the money that she just got from all the people who are protected now that Maxwell is going to prison, and is totally not going to kill herself in prison. And this story will die by the wayside without anybody actually facing any justice for it, except for the sacrificial lamb. From NBC, some more stuff on the Don't Say Straight bill. NBC News, I cannot teach in Florida. LGBTQ educators fear fallout from new school law. Well, bye. Oh, and by the way, take your voting with you. And also, by the way, is this Miss Frizzle? Like, seriously? Is that who this is? Is that who I'm looking at right now? Orangish red hair. A dress that's loud and obnoxious. I mean, are they getting in a school bus and going through the solar system? Is that what's about to happen here? This is Nicolette Solomon, I guess, teacher in Florida for 4 years before recently quitting the profession. Well, bye. I'm sure California will espouse your views a lot more and let you give them out of the classroom. And I'm sure it would be so hard for Florida, that is warm year-round. I'm sure it'd be so hard for them to pull teachers from places like this. From Matt Levites. Last month, a group of parents in Orlando demanded consequences against 6th grade science teacher Robert Thalender. His crime? Thalender acknowledged his marriage at the school. That's probably not what happened. I don't know because I haven't looked into the Thalender thing, but that's probably not what happened. He married a man. This alone is not an issue. Sharing the details with all the 6th grade students is the issue, the parents wrote in a letter sent to their children's school board, which was shared with NBC News. It was not appropriate. Many of the students felt very uncomfortable with the conversations and shared with their families. So, I mean, that's the question. And again, didn't see the classroom, haven't read the letter, but I mean, did he just say, "Oh, I'm married and I have a man now that I'm married to," or did he say, "Oh, my asshole is so sore because my husband gave it to me all weekend"? I actually don't know if that's the case or not. Thalender just said he'll be out for a few days because he was getting married, no problem. The letter continued, but to discuss the details and create an uncomfortable situation for the students with no benefit of teaching his subject matter is inappropriate. Thalender denied having discussed his marriage since he and his husband tied the knot in March of last year, aside from acknowledging it when he was asked. No action was taken against him by school leaders who defended him several days later with a letter of their own, he said. Nevertheless, the incident prompted Thalender to make this school year his last after 11 years working in Florida as a teacher. "A lot of trust is given to teachers, and it made it seem like I wasn't being trusted because there was something wrong with me for being gay," he said. "It makes it seem like being gay is something vile or disturbing or disgusting. When it's described as making children uncomfortable, knowing that I'm married to a man, it hurt." Well, for the most part, I think the kids just made fun of you, but if that's all that you did. But yeah, if you're talking about the graphic details about this, I don't know what happened in the classroom. I'm going to be out and say it. And if you want the fire and brimstone side of it, the Daily Ignoramus is going to be coming up right after this program. And he will teach you the fire and brimstone side of it. While the Orlando parents did not succeed in having Tholender disciplined or ousted, he and other LGBTQ teachers in the state worry that the newly signed state law, titled Parental Rights in Education, but dubbed by critics as the Don't Say Gay law, will galvanize parents to take similar action against them. In fact, Tholender said he believes parents who complained about him were emboldened by the bill even before it was signed into law. So again, if the kids came out and did a major campaign about this, there was probably something else that went on to this, I'm going to say. And again, could it have been that he was discussing the anal penetration that he did, how good his husband's cock tasted? I don't think that he would do that, but I don't know. Or maybe it was an idea of, well, I'm getting married, I'm here, I'm queer, get used to it, kind of sentiment like that. I have no idea what happened there. And I'm actually willing to bet that most of the parents that were involved in that didn't either. But realistically, that does not change the fact that, and again, to come back out here and say, well, I just wanted to go paddleboarding with my husband over the weekend, is different from, I spent the weekend in Cabo with my husband, and boy is my asshole sore. And furthermore, the biggest thing about this is that under the bill, if something does come up like this and parents decide to go and do a frivolous lawsuit over something like this, the onus is on the parents, A, to go back and enforce this, but also to be able to find a judge who won't laugh this out of court. A lot of the more frivolous ones, like the ones they're describing, like what happened with Tholender here, they're going to look at this and say, unless I have evidence that he said that he was taken in the ass the entire weekend, I can't do anything with this. And it's the same thing with the kindergartners, the guy that we talked about on MSNBC on Friday. Where the judge is going to look at this and, oh, well, he said that he was married to a man. Or, oh, hey, one of the kids put up a picture of his family with 2 dads and you want me to sue over this? Ha 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 ha! Get out of my courtroom. There is still that check on the Florida law. So, there is more to this than they're coming out here. They're just trying to find another way to get DeSantis ousted at this point. From Fox News. Oberlin College attempt to overturn defamation suit from bakery called racist falls short. From Adam Sabes. Oberlin College in Ohio suffered another legal blow in its years-long battle to overturn a jury decision that found the college had defamed a local bakery, with an Ohio appeals court upholding the previous $25 million judgment awarded to local businesses that claims the college committed libel against it. In 2016, Alan Gibson, the son of Gibson's Bakery and Food Mart owners David Gibson and Alan Gibson, chased down and tackled a black student who is suspected of stealing a bottle of wine. 2 black students at Oberlin College who were friends of the individual who stole the bottle of wine became involved in the physical incident. All 3 students were arrested, according to court documents, and pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges. The bakery's owners sued Oberlin College in 2017, claiming the school had libeled them and said that their business was harmed by their actions. On Thursday, the 9th District Court of Appeals ruling, which was unanimous, with the 3-judge panel rejecting Oberlin's college claims, and upheld the previous ruling that the college is responsible for paying the Gibsons' legal fees, amounting to $6.3 million. The previous ruling also awarded $25 million to the bakery for damages. I think that was a little bit excessive. I think that the judgment was in the right for awarding the settlement to the bakery, but I think $25 million was once we get up to legal fees, $31.3 million was a little bit excessive. But there you go. If you libel somebody, you can't countersue your way out of it. That was a good decision. From CNN, some more midterm stuff here. House passes bill to federally decriminalize marijuana. From Kristen Wilson. They want to go send this bill, by the way, to 3 Strikes Biden for signature. The House has voted with a slim bipartisan majority to federally decriminalize marijuana. The vote was 220 to 204. Tom McClintock of California, Brian Mast, and Matt Gaetz, both of Florida, joined the majority of Democrats in supporting the bill, while Democrats Henry Queller of Texas and Chris Pappas of New Hampshire voted against. The bill, sponsored by Jerry Nadler of New York, will prevent federal agencies from denying federal workers security clearances for cannabis use and allow the Veterans Admin to recommend medical marijuana to veterans living with post-traumatic stress disorder, plus gains revenue by authorizing a sales tax on marijuana sales. The bill also expunges the record of people convicted of nonviolent cannabis offenses, which House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer said can haunt people of color and impact the trajectory of their lives and career indefinitely. It can result in a difficulty finding employment, difficulty finding housing, denial of access to federal benefits, denial of financial aid at colleges and universities, and denial of the right to vote, Hoyer said. That's why we're dealing with this. No, you're doing a Hail Mary right now to paint Republicans as anti-marijuana decriminalization, which they are, unfortunately. The neocons are not going to go anywhere near this, by passing a bill that you would in no way pass if you had a filibuster-proof majority in both chambers, that you wouldn't go anywhere near because your corporate donors live on the fact, especially your corporate prison donors, live on the fact that they can throw people in for a nonviolent crime. This is another something to come back out here and say, marijuana decriminalization, the majority of Americans want it, but the evil Republicans in the Senate have blocked it again. And yes, they also want to tax the motherfucking shit out of it. I think it should be federally decriminalized. I really do think it should. But I know that's not what's going to happen out of this. This was just a political play. To come back out and seem very, very, very nicey nice over the midterms. And by the way, I would laugh my ass off if this passed in the Senate by like 75 to 24 and had to go to 3 Strikes Biden's desk. From Axios, U.S. to issue gender-neutral X-passports. From Fadel Alassane, U.S. citizens will be able to select X as their gender on their U.S. passport applications from April 11th. The White House announced Thursday as part of a rollout of new policies to coincide with Transgender Day of Visibility. The development of this milestone for Americans who identify as non-binary and gender non-conforming, and the White House Tuesday called it a major step in the president's efforts to expand their access to accurate ID documents. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security announced a series of moves to improve the travel experience for transgender people, something that is notoriously saddled with stress and discrimination. The steps include updating the TSA advanced imaging technology to increase security and efficiency by reducing false alarm rates and pat-downs for the traveling public. Honestly, I really don't care. It's just an ID card. This is, with the exception of the idea of with your regular ID, showing what's going on with your plumbing so doctors give you the correct diagnosis without having to pull your pants off and see what's down there. This is, again, just another virtue signal. End of story. From the Daily Wire. Conservative groups call on Senate to oppose ideological progressive Biden FTC nominee, warning of hyper-partisan extremist advocacy. Why do we keep going over this over and over again? Has anybody sensed a pattern off of this yet? It seems like everybody up there has been accused and usually found incredibly, How does that go when they talk about the sexual assault? Credibly accused of extremism. Except usually when they come back to it and they look into it, the Senate's able to find the receipts on all these judges or cabinet members over and over again. From Mary Margaret Olahan. Conservative groups are calling for lawmakers to oppose President Biden's Federal Trade Commission nominee, warning that Alvaro Bedoya would bring a record of hyper-partisan extremist advocacy to the FTC. Conservative groups warned the Senate that Bedoya would steer the agency in a direction of overreaching and harmful regulatory policies in a letter initially sent in early March and resent Thursday ahead of Senate vote. The letter is signed by Americans for Tax Reform President Grover Nordquist, American Commitment President Phil Kerpen, and a slew of other conservative leaders. The FTC is an enforcement agency with oversight of issues such as antitrust, consumer protection, and privacy, the letter warned. The Commission should respect the long-standing commitment to the consumer welfare standard and free markets not focused on expanding government control or social issues. Bedoya would not bring a cooler head, but would exacerbate the FTC's increasing disregard for consensus and precedent, the letter said. As an enforcement agency, FTC commissioners should strive towards a cooperative, measured, and transparent approach to its decisions, aiming towards unanimity over political gamesmanship. Bedoya has repeatedly criticized conservative figures like former President Trump, asking in January 2018, what else does Trump have to say for the media to expressly call him a racist and white supremacist? Does he literally have to say white people are better than black people? Does he have to say the N-word? At some point, it's not a racist comment, he tweeted, it's just racist. In a tweet following the January 6th Selfie Fest, Bedoya called for Republican Senators Hawley and Cruz to resign from their positions. He also called On Ice, an out-of-control domestic surveillance agency that peers into all of our lives, and retweeted an August 2021 tweet calling Republican Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, Greg Abbott of Texas, and Tate Reeves of Mississippi Death Eaters over their coronavirus containment policies. Well, this sounds like a charming fellow. But he is, of course, hyper-partisan. And leave it to Ron Klain to put up hyper-partisan people. Unfortunately, from Fox Business, U.S. Senate votes to move forward with Alvaro Bedoya's nomination to the FTC. From Paul Best. The Senate voted Wednesday to advance a confirmation vote for President Biden's nominee to the FTC, privacy advocate and Georgetown University law professor Alvaro Bedoya. The Senate Commerce Committee was deadlocked 14-14 on Bedoya's nomination, but the full Senate voted 51-50 on Wednesday, with Vice President Kamala Harris breaking the tie. So I guess the dude is back from having a stroke. If confirmed, Bedoya will give Democrats a majority at the FTC, which enforces federal consumer protection and antitrust laws. Without Mr. Bedoya, the FTC and members are left handicapped and incapable of moving forward, so today's motion to discharge this matter of immense importance, and I hope all my colleagues who care about fighting inflation and price manipulation vote to proceed with Mr. Bedoya's nomination, Chuck U. Schumer of New York said on the Senate floor before the vote. So he is not confirmed yet, but he's been moved to, I guess they can have hearings towards him. But he's an extremist, so good luck. From Politico, we have just a couple more, then we will do rule of acquisition, head out of here for the day. It's amazing. I can still always go to 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. Amazon workers on Staten Island form company's first union in stunning upset. From Nick Nidzwidak. An Amazon facility on Staten voted to become the company's first unionized U.S. workplace in a mammoth upset that would be one of organized labor's biggest victories in decades. Dude, Bezos is just going to shut that warehouse down, so I don't know why this is a victory. Workers at the site known as JFK 8 voted 2 2654 to 2131 in favor of organizing. According to officials at the National Labor Relations Board, there are 67 contested ballots that were not tallied, far short of the number necessary to swing the results. Christian Smalls, a former Amazon employee who is the leader of the organizing effort, declared victory as the vote neared its conclusion and popped open a bottle of champagne outside the NLRB offices in Brooklyn after it was made official. 2 years ago, my life changed forever, Smalls said to reporters, referring to his firing from Amazon amid worker protests of pandemic safety issues that later rekindled the unionization campaign. When the pinko pox came to play, Amazon failed us. The result is particularly surprising as it involved an upstart group, the Amazon Labor Union, that has opted not to hitch its fortunes to a more established union and instead rally workers as an independent organization. So, I actually do have to stand back a little bit and say, this actually might work. Now, once again, I have said, and I've talked about this before, I still think Bezos is just going to shut this plant down. But I'm in favor of unionization if it's a grassroots thing, if it's something that comes out here and says, hey, we want to come out here and pull our money together and go hire some lawyers and unionize just on a grassroots fashion. But the problem with unionization normally when it comes off of this is the fact that it's a major corporation that came out and, your union leader comes out in his brand new Corvette and brags about the 25-cent raise that he got you. And that's it. That's all that happens out of it. You make a bunch of other richer people richer, and I'm sure that, by the way, Smalls is going to get fucking rich too. But we don't talk about that. But this is more the type of unionization that I'd like to see, not necessarily where we go when we see the major corporate unions coming out of this. I'm surprised. We'll watch this and see where this goes. I still think, like I said, Bezos is just going to shut this thing down, but I'm happy to see at least one thing happen off of this that's actually grassroots. All right, from Fox News. Pennsylvania judge boots 5 Dems from school board over mask mandate. From Pilar Arias. A Pennsylvania judge ordered 5 school board members who voted at the beginning of the school year to make masks mandatory to be immediately removed from office. The order is a result of a parent-filed petition to the Westchester Area School District back in February, according to the public media organization WHYY. One of the parents, Beth Ann Rosica, argued that under the Pennsylvania School Code, districts have no authority to require students to wear masks. The 5 removed were all Democrats. The lawyer representing them, Kenneth Roos from Whistler Perlstein LLP, said they submitted a motion for reconsideration of Judge William Mahon's order Tuesday night. The group anticipated it would be accepted for filing Wednesday morning. The board opted to continue requiring masks after Pennsylvania's state of emergency first ended on June 2021. It kept the decision in place 2 months after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court declared the mandate unconstitutional in December. Look, if your Constitution doesn't allow for this, which appears in the situation that it doesn't, and you go back and do it anyway, you're probably not going to stay in your position for very long. I hate to tell you that, but that's how that typically works. So this is probably the right decision. When you go back and openly defy your Constitution, you have no place in government service. And by the way, Biden, I'm looking at you when I say that. I am looking at you when I say stuff like that. The decision from the Court of Common Pleas states the removal of the board members named in the petition was a procedural result and does not address any of the allegations made in the complaint. A statement from Superintendent Dr. Robert Sokolowski said, Special Counsel to the district is in the process of preparing substantive response on behalf of those school board members named in the petition. Well, again, if it's in the Constitution and you violated the Constitution, you can sue to your heart's content, but it's going to keep getting laughed out of fucking court. And again, this is the most important part. If the parents have indoctrinated the fear into their kids that they need to have a mask on, otherwise they will die, that is between the parents and the kids. And as long as they don't get disruptive and angry and violent in the school against their other kids, they can wear as many masks as they want. They can wear 10 masks if they want to. Alright, and the last one. Oh God, no. Please stop. Please help us. No! From NBC, Sarah Palin seeks return to national politics by launching bid for House seat. From Zoe Richards and Vaughn Hilliard. In her first campaign for public office since 2008, former Alaska governor and one-time Republican vice presidential nominee Sarah Palin announced Friday she was running for Congress. Palin, who was catapulted onto the national stage as evil tumor John McCain's running mate 14 years ago, jumped into a race to fill the seat held by GOP Rep. Don Young for almost 50 years before he died last month. Oh, public service is calling, and I would be honored to represent the men and women of Alaska in Congress, just as Rep. Young did for 49 years, Palin wrote in a statement. America is at a tipping point. As I watched the far left destroy the country, I knew I had to step up and join the fight. In her announcement, Palin blasted out-of-control inflation, empty shelves, and gas prices, and vowed to combat the left's socialist big government America last agenda. Oh God, she's going to be a Trump one, isn't she? And of course, this is another situation of looking back at this and pointing out that Sarah Palin has no actual morals. She just hitches her wagon to whatever's going to get her the most power. Again, to go full-on world police, John McCain running mate, to I'm going to go full-on populist, and show you how America first I can be, and how Trumpy I can be, and Trump has endorsed her, by the way. Yes, this is a woman who is disingenuous and is just, again, jumping onto whatever's going to land her the most power. And I don't believe for a second, given the fact that she's gone from John McCain to Trumpite rhetoric, that she believes anything that she's saying. She's just trying to go in and say, vote for me, I believe in that thing that you like, eh? Alright. So, there you go. Your next congressperson from Alaska. And the scariest part is, she's probably going to win. Alright, and that is all that I have for the news for the day. But the last thing that we do on a Monday is check out one of the rules of acquisition. So, something we've been doing every Monday for quite a while at this point is going through, looking in at this. As me being the ultra-capitalist, I am the closest thing to a human Ferengi that there is. Thank you to the 8-axis test for that. So we come in and we look at the rules of acquisition and see how they applied in canon and non-canon, in the places that because this is memory beta, and how we can apply some of them to our real life. Some of them we can't, obviously, because they are straight up evil and they go too far on the ultra-capitalist side, but the ones that we can, we apply to our regular lives. So the last week we talked about the 67th rule of acquisition, the riskier the road, the greater the profit, and pointed out the fact that the people who are running moonshine, running drugs, doing backroom corporate deals have to charge so much for what they do. And even the hackers out there who work for other people, not just going out to be chaotic, but who work for other people, charge so much for this, is because they're putting their necks on the line to do that. Their reward, or their risk is high, so they demand the highest of profit, so that the reward is just as high. But today we are going to look at the 63rd rule of acquisition. Work is the best therapy, at least for your employees. And this comes, of course, from being the boss, which is what well, it's what the Ferengi do. I think it's funny for the most part. And sometimes I can see the avenue of it as well. But this comes to us from one of the novels, the TTN novel, which I'm not sure what TTN is. I'll have to go and look at that, but it's from Over the Torrent Sea, the TTN novel. Work is the best therapy, at least for your employees, which, I mean, I can hear Quark saying this. I can hear this in Quark's voice as he's sitting in the bar saying, "Oh, well, get back to work here. You know, work. You're feeling sad right now. You're getting divorced. Your marriage is breaking up. Well, if you go and get back to work, you'll feel better because you won't be thinking about it. Work is the best therapy." But there is some merit to this, because sometimes if you like, obviously on a divorce or the death of a family member, that's not really the case, and we have bereavement for a reason. But you know, if you're down, you've got to think about something. Sometimes if you just put yourself into a project, you do take a second, you step away from what it was that was troubling you, and then when you come back to it, you can see it with a fresh set of eyes. I'm not saying it's the perfect way to do that, but sometimes it's not even just going back and doing work, like working for somebody else, like it would be under Quarks. Well, go serve some drinks and go run the Tonga tables. It's not necessarily just that, but even like around the house. If you can't figure out a solution, like your buddy comes to you and says, "Oh, well, I don't know what to do, but this is happening in my life," and the two of you sit down and you build a deck together in your house, or you build a table, or you do one of those little projects that you have, or you fix something around your house. And then while you're thinking about A, your buddy comes back out and tells you, "Oh, well, this is what happened here, the details," or B, again, he steps away from it and then comes back to it after the project and looks at it with a fresh set of eyes. It's not the way the Ferengi would look at it, but it's a good way to come back and look at it and say, "Hey, you know what? Let's just step away from this, think about it with a clear head, and go." So there is some merit to this, and we can apply this to our regular everyday lives and show the world that, yeah, I mean, there's another way to do this other than just coming back out here and facing everything head on and not having to release an outlet for it. And that's what we have. So next week we will look at the 65th rule of acquisition. There is no 64th listed in Alpha or Beta canon. So we will look at the 65th, but that will be next week, next Monday. And today we're going to head out of here. I need to get my fade set back up again. Again, I lost all my scenes with a power outage last week, so I need to get my fade in. I'll do that, because I have to set up my KTZed scenes at the end of the night too. But yeah, let's head out of here for the day. So, thanks everybody who came back in here, chatted in the live chat, came and hung out with us. It was a busy day in live chat today. I got to go back and look at what it was that you guys were all saying here. But I know a lot of you guys were pissed off about what was going on over in Sacramento, which is absolutely understandable because, you know, they're going to come in here, they're going to try to do confiscations and everything else back out of here. So, yeah, you have a right to be upset off of all this and everything else that has happened at the top of the show. So, definitely thank you for everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. If you are just lurking, get those last minute messages in so I can get your name recorded in the log of the week and say, hey, on a Friday, thank you for coming in and enjoying my show. Thank you, and I'll read your screen name aloud. Otherwise, well, we are going to be back here later on tonight for KTZed Redemption, where we will be talking, and I didn't turn off the other music, where we will be talking about the Biden budget proposal. We'll probably talk about the shooting that happened in Sacramento a little bit. I might move that to main topic. We'll be talking about the budget proposal, the Ukraine, the inflation, the oil reserves, and a whole bunch more. Come back and join us 5:30 Central Time tonight. Otherwise, be back here tomorrow morning for more Contemporary. Stick around if you are on Twitch. We are going over to the Daily Ignoramus. Definitely enjoy seeing that, so we're going rating, and we will see you here next time for more Contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.